Have you ever looked at your bank account at the end of the month and wondered where all your money went? You work hard. You show up every day. You put in the hours. But somehow, there's never as much left as you expected. And it's confusing because you're not living some extravagant lifestyle. You didn't buy a luxury car. You didn't take a fancy vacation. You're not spending thousands of dollars on designer clothes. You're just living a normal life. A coffee here, food delivery there, a few subscriptions you barely use, a couple of impulse purchases that seemed harmless at the time. I've been there myself. And what I eventually realized is that the problem wasn't that I wasn't earning enough. The problem was that money was quietly slipping away in small amounts that I barely noticed. One little expense doesn't seem like much, but hundreds of small expenses over weeks and months can drain your finances faster than you think. It's like trying to fill a bucket that has tiny holes in the bottom. You keep pouring more water in, but the bucket never gets full. That's why in today's video, Quiet Growth Lab is going to share a simple Japanese money method that has been helping people take control of their finances for more than 100 years. Millions of people have used it to save more money, reduce financial stress, and build better habits without needing a raise, a second job, or a bigger income. Sometimes the answer isn't making more money. Sometimes it's finally understanding where it's going. One of the biggest financial traps I've ever fallen into was believing that earning more money would solve everything. I told myself, once I get a better job, things will be easier. Then I got the raise. And somehow, I still felt broke. The truth is, most people don't struggle because of one huge purchase. It's usually the small things, the daily habits, the expenses we stop noticing. A streaming service here, a convenience store run there, ordering food because we're tired, buying something online because it's on sale. None of these decisions feel important in the moment, but they add up. That's why some people double their income and still live paycheck to paycheck. Their spending quietly grows along with their earnings. Think about it like a bucket with a tiny leak. You might not notice a few drops escaping, but leave it long enough and the bucket ends up empty. Money works the same way. Most financial problems don't happen overnight. They happen slowly, one small decision at a time. That's what makes them so dangerous. The leaks are easy to ignore until one day you realize there's almost nothing left. The people who build wealth aren't always the people who make the most money. Often, they're the people who learn how to stop the leaks before they become floods. More than 100 years ago, a Japanese woman noticed something that most people still struggle with today. Her name was Hani Motoko, Japan's first female journalist. Back in 1904, she spent a lot of time observing ordinary families. What she saw surprised her. Many people weren't poor because they had low incomes. They were struggling because they had no awareness of how their money was being used. They weren't making financial decisions consciously. They were simply reacting, spending, and hoping everything would somehow work out. So Hani Motoko created a simple system called Kakeibo. At first glance, it looks like nothing more than a household notebook, but it's much more powerful than that. Kakeibo wasn't designed to make people rich overnight. It was designed to make people pay attention. Because once you become aware of your habits, everything starts to change. You stop spending on autopilot. You stop guessing where your money went. And for the first time, you begin making intentional choices instead of emotional ones. That's why Kakeibo has survived for more than a century. Not because it's complicated, but because it solves a problem that still exists today. Most people don't need more money first. They need more awareness. A lot of people hear about Kakeibo and assume it's just another budgeting system. Honestly, that's what I thought too at first. But Kakeibo isn't really about tracking numbers. It's not accounting. It's not spreadsheets. And it's definitely not about turning your life into a math problem. At its core, Kakeibo is about awareness. Most of us spend money without thinking. We swipe a card, click a button, and move on with our day. A week later, we barely remember what we bought. Then the credit card bill shows up, and we're left wondering what happened. Kakeibo forces you to slow down. It makes you look at your money on purpose. It asks simple questions. Why did I buy this? Did I actually need it? Did it improve my life? That's what makes it powerful. The goal isn't to judge yourself. The goal is to wake up. Because once you become aware of your habits, you start making better decisions naturally. You stop spending on autopilot. And that's usually where real financial change begins. Have you ever noticed how different it feels to spend cash versus using a credit card? When you pay with cash, you actually see the money leaving your hands. You feel it. There's a small moment where your brain asks, "Do I really want this?" That's what experts call the pain of paying. And believe it or not, that feeling is actually helpful. The problem is that modern payment methods remove that feeling almost completely. You tap a card. You click a button. The purchase takes 2 seconds. It feels effortless. The reward comes instantly. The cost comes later. I've caught myself buying things online that I probably wouldn't have purchased if I had to hand over physical cash. Not because I needed them, just because it was easy. That's why people often spend more with cards than cash. The transaction becomes invisible. And when spending feels invisible, it's much easier to lose control. Sometimes the small discomfort of paying is exactly what protects us from making decisions we'll regret later. If you feel like it's getting harder to save money, you're not imagining it. Almost everything around us is designed to make spending as easy as possible. You can order something from Amazon in seconds. Streaming services renew automatically. Apps save your payment information. One click, and the purchase is done before you've had time to think about it. The system isn't built to slow you down. It's built to keep you buying. And honestly, that's what makes it dangerous. Most spending today doesn't feel like spending. There's no wallet opening. No cash changing hands. No moment to pause, just a button. I've looked through my bank statements before and found subscriptions I forgot existed. Small charges. $10 here, $15 there. Nothing that felt important by itself. But together, they added up to hundreds of dollars every year. That's why being intentional matters more than ever. Because in a world that constantly encourages you to spend, simply paying attention has become a financial advantage. One thing that surprised me about Kakeibo is that it doesn't want you using an app. No fancy software, no spreadsheets, just a notebook and a pen. At first, that sounded old-fashioned, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. When you type numbers into an app, it feels automatic. You enter the expense and move on. There's no connection to it, but writing something down by hand is different. It slows you down. It forces you to pay attention. I've noticed this myself. When I physically write down that I spent $20 on takeout or $50 on something I didn't really need, it hits differently. I can't just scroll past it. For a few seconds, I have to face the decision I made. That's the real purpose of Kakeibo. It's not about recording expenses. It's about creating awareness. Every dollar written on paper becomes a reminder that money is a trade. You traded your time, your energy, and your effort for that purchase. And when you start seeing your spending that way, you naturally become more intentional. Not because someone told you to spend less, because you finally see what your choices actually cost. One reason so many budgets fail is because they're way too complicated. People create 20 different categories, then they get overwhelmed and quit after a week. Kakeibo keeps things simple. It asks you to put every expense into one of four buckets. The first bucket is survival, things you genuinely need: rent, groceries, utilities, medicine, the essentials that keep your life running. The second bucket is personal wants, eating out, new clothes, hobbies, entertainment, things that make life enjoyable but aren't necessary for survival. The third bucket is growth, and honestly, this is my favorite one: books, courses, learning new skills, things that help you become a better version of yourself. The fourth bucket is unexpected expenses: car repairs, medical bills, birthday gifts, those things that show up whether you're ready or not. What I like about this system is that it forces you to be honest. A lot of us spend plenty of money on comfort and entertainment, but when we look closer, we realize we're spending almost nothing on growth. And that's a tough thing to see, because your spending habits tell a story. They show what you value, whether you realize it or not. Sometimes the numbers reveal a version of ourselves we'd rather not look at. But that's also where change begins. Most people think financial problems come from big mistakes. In reality, it's usually the small stuff. The daily latte you barely think about, the clothes you bought because they were on sale, the subscriptions you forgot were still charging your card every month. None of these seem dangerous on their own. That's why they're so easy to ignore. A few years ago, I went through my bank statement line by line, and honestly, it was uncomfortable. I found charges I didn't remember signing up for, purchases I couldn't even explain, money leaving my account for things that brought me little or no value. That was a wake-up call. Sometimes the biggest leak in your finances isn't something dramatic. It's a collection of tiny habits you've stopped noticing. So here's a simple question. What are you spending money on that no longer improves your life? Not what costs the most, what brings the least value, because that's usually where your financial freedom starts, not by earning more, by plugging the holes you already have. What I like most about Kakeibo is that it doesn't overwhelm you with complicated rules. Instead, it asks four simple questions. How much money do I have? How much do I want to save? How much do I absolutely need to spend? And what can I improve next month? That's it. But don't let the simplicity fool you. These questions are powerful. Most people never stop to ask themselves these things. They just earn money, pay bills, spend what's left, and hope everything works out. I used to do the same thing. I'd check my bank account, see there was money available, and assume I was fine. Then somehow the month would end and I'd be wondering where it all went. Kakeibo forces you to start the month with intention instead of reaction. You know your number. You know your goal. You know your limits. And the last question might be the most important of all. What can I improve? Not what did I do wrong? Not how badly did I mess up? Just one small thing I can do better next month. Because real financial progress doesn't come from perfection. It comes from making slightly better decisions over and over again. This was probably the biggest mindset shift I ever learned about money. Most of us grow up following the same formula. Income minus expenses equals savings. In other words, we pay everyone else first and hope there's something left for ourselves. The problem is that there usually isn't. Life always finds a way to use every dollar that's available. There's another bill, another dinner out, another sale, another unexpected expense. And before you know it, the money is gone. Kakeibo flips the formula upside down. Income minus savings equals spending. That means the moment you get paid, you move money into savings first, not what's left over, not someday, not when you feel more comfortable, first. I remember resisting this idea because it felt impossible. But once I started doing it, something surprising happened. I adapted. Instead of spending whatever was available, I learned to live within what remained. And that's what many financially successful people understand. They don't save what's left after spending. They spend what's left after saving. It's a small change on paper, but it can completely change the direction of your financial life. Here's something I've noticed about money. The more available it feels, the easier it is to spend. If I have $3,000 sitting in my checking account, somehow everything starts looking affordable. Suddenly I have reasons to upgrade things, buy things, and justify things. That's human nature. There's actually a principle called Parkinson's Law. It says that things tend to expand to fill the space available to them. Money works the same way. Spending expands to match whatever is available. That's why Kakeibo encourages you to remove your savings immediately. When you move that money out of sight, something interesting happens. Your brain stops treating it as spending money. You adjust. You become more creative. You cook at home more often. You think twice before buying things. You start asking whether something is actually necessary. I've learned that discipline becomes much easier when temptation isn't constantly sitting in front of you. Sometimes the smartest financial move isn't earning more money. It's simply seeing less of it. One thing I really like about Kakeibo is that it doesn't expect you to become perfect overnight. It asks a much simpler question. How can I do a little better than last month? That's it. Not how can I completely change my life? Not how can I save $10,000 this year? Just one small improvement. Maybe you bring lunch to work twice a week instead of buying takeout every day. Maybe you finally cancel that subscription you've been paying for but haven't used in months. Maybe you skip one impulse purchase that you would normally justify. Small changes don't feel exciting. They don't make great headlines, but they work. I've learned that most people fail because they try to change everything at once. They get motivated for a few days, then burn out. Real progress looks different. It's boring sometimes. It's slow. It's one better decision repeated over and over again. And when you look back after a year, those tiny improvements add up to something much bigger than you ever expected. You don't need to become a different person next month. You just need to become slightly better than you were this month. There was a time when debt felt like a shadow following me everywhere. Even when I wasn't thinking about it, it was there. Every paycheck already had a destination before it arrived. Every financial decision felt heavier because part of my income belonged to something I bought months or even years ago. That's the thing about debt. It quietly takes away your freedom. When you owe money, you're not just paying back dollars. You're giving away future time, future energy, future choices. A lot of people think debt is just a number on a statement. But if you've ever struggled with it, you know it's much more than that. It's stress when you wake up. It's stress when you try to sleep. It's the feeling that no matter how hard you work, you're still running in place. That's why paying off debt isn't just a financial goal, it's a personal one. Every balance you eliminate gives you a little piece of your freedom back, a little more breathing room, a little more control over your future. And honestly, that's worth a lot more than most people realize. When most people look at their debt, they focus on the biggest number first. And I understand why. It feels logical. But sometimes logic isn't what keeps you going. Motivation does. That's why I love the snowball method. Instead of attacking the largest debt, you start with the smallest one. Maybe it's a $300 credit card balance. Maybe it's a small personal loan. Whatever it is, you focus all your extra effort on wiping that one out first. And something powerful happens when you do. You get a win. For the first time, you see a debt disappear completely. I remember how good that felt. It wasn't life-changing money, but psychologically, it changed everything. Suddenly, I wasn't someone drowning in debt anymore. I was someone making progress. Then you take the money you were putting toward that debt and roll it into the next one, and then the next. Each victory gives you more confidence, more momentum, more belief that you're actually capable of finishing the journey. Debt thrives on hopelessness. The snowball method creates the opposite. It creates proof that you're moving forward. And sometimes that's exactly what people need to keep going. When most people hear about budgeting, saving money, or tracking expenses, they immediately think about getting rich. I used to think that too. But the longer I've studied money, the more I've realized that the real goal isn't wealth, it's peace. Because money problems don't just affect your bank account, they follow you everywhere. They show up when you're lying awake at night wondering if you'll have enough next month. They show up when an unexpected bill arrives and your stomach instantly tightens. They show up in your relationships, your stress levels, even your ability to enjoy the people and moments around. That's why I think Kakeibo is about something much deeper than saving money. It helps quiet the noise. When you know where your money is going, you worry less. When you have savings, even a small amount, you sleep a little better. When you're not constantly stressed about bills, your mind has room to focus on things that actually matter. Your family, your health, your goals, your future. And maybe that's the biggest lesson of all. Kakeibo won't magically turn you into a millionaire, but it can help you feel more in control, more intentional, more confident. And honestly, that's a kind of wealth that a lot of people spend their entire lives searching for. Because at the end of the day, money is just a tool. The real goal is building a life where you don't have to think about money every minute of every day. A life with less anxiety, less chaos, and a little more peace. If you found this video helpful, take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to Quiet Growth Lab. Every week, we share simple lessons about money, self-discipline, and personal growth that can help you build a calmer, stronger, and more intentional life. And if there's one spending habit you're ready to change after watching this video, let us know in the comments. I'd genuinely love to hear your answer. You never know. That one small change could be the first step toward a completely different financial future. Thank you for spending part of your day with Quiet Growth Lab. I hope this story about Kakeibo gave you a different way of thinking about money. Not as something to chase endlessly, not as something to fear, but as something you can understand, manage, and use more intentionally. If there's one idea I'd love for you to remember, it's this. Financial freedom doesn't start when you earn more money. It starts when you become aware of where your money is going. Small choices matter. Small habits matter. And over time, those small decisions can completely change your future. Take care of yourself. Be patient with the process. And remember that progress is always more important than perfection. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.